For today's program, we're going to start with a short welcome from Ciaran Gallagher, our alumni representative, who we neglected to actually include on the program, and apologies to Ciaran. She'll be followed by our cohort-nominated fellow speaker, Edgar Barraza. Yeah, you can give it up for Edgar. Then LGC's Executive Director, Kate Meis, will say a few words, followed by Carrol, OPR's liaison to CivicSpark, who's going to introduce Kate Gordon, the new director of OPR. And then we'll follow with the presentation of certificates to the fellows. And then afterwards, we have a short informal reception downstairs. So enjoy. I hope you all have a wonderful time. To get us started, please come on up, Ciaran. Ciaran was in the 2017-18 CivicSpark class, and she's currently serving as a Capital Fellow with Cal Recycle and as a member of our alumni board. Ciaran?
Thanks, Kif. So when I was first asked to speak to you today, I did not think I would have much to say. What sage wisdom could I, someone who sat in these chairs just 12 months ago, give you? I am also just another young professional trying to make a difference in this complex, inequitable world, but I'm delighted to be here anyway. In varying ways, you will hear the advice, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And to some extent, that's true. But to succeed, you have to know a couple of things too. Think back to or look at your notes from orientation. Recognize how much you have learned about local governments, CEQA, water policy, stakeholder engagement over these last 11 months. And through the CivicSpark Fellowship, you've also met the right people as well. The people around you in this room, as well as alumni, current and future. During the first alumni board meeting, my friend Delaney mentioned she was about to be unemployed and looking for a job. Another alum reached out to her, and a month later, she was working for an environmental consulting firm and loving it. But not only will these folks be your professional network, they will remain your friends. This year, I went on a camping trip with folks from my cohort, although many of them not from my region. It didn't matter that I had barely known many of them before. We laughed as we roasted s'mores. We went looking for banana slugs and talked about California water rights and active transportation. I don't need to tell you that a year of service for AmeriCorps is hard. You pinched pennies, were probably the only young person in a city office, and for many of you, this might have been your first year out of undergrad, which is a difficult transition in and of itself. But you learned through that hardship, and you grew. Past and current CivicSparkies continuously astound me with their curiosity, insight, and drive for social justice. I'm honored to be part of this remarkable group of go-getters and doers. So what advice do I have? Challenge yourself, get outside your comfort zone, be okay with and talk about failure, continue to push for equity and inclusion. This is just the start of our journey together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ciaran. Now I'd like to invite up Edgar Barraza. Edgar is currently serving with the city of Emeryville, working on their equity programs and frameworks. He was nominated by the rest of the cohort to be our fellow speaker to present a short address. Thank you, Edgar.
So this is not part of my speech yet, but just found out 30 minutes ago that I got a job at the SFPUC. So my emotions are kind of everywhere, so it's gonna be like that. But yeah, so what I'm really excited about today is that we have all, hold on. What I'm really excited about today is that we have all gathered from all over California to acknowledge and to learn from the work we have done at the local, regional, and state government level. As we learned about the fourth climate assessment, we know that it's crucial to act on climate change now. We know that climate change will disrupt ecosystems, infrastructures, and economies. But the fact that all of us are here today remind us there are so many passionate environmentalists that care about the environment and those who are currently disproportionately affected by environmental burdens. Today, I come as a CivicSpark Fellow, but also as an environmental justice advocate, standing on the shoulders of previous environmental and social justice champions that paved the way and a path for an openly queer Latino to be here today. I wanted to quickly thank LGC and OPR for giving me the opportunity to work on these amazing projects that I was able to lead. But I owe a special thanks to the folks who have inspired me. I would not have been able to be here today, accomplish what I've had, without the help from my fierce mentors, Reina Lopez and Claudia Espino, from San Francisco's Department of Environment, who ignited the flame for me to work at the intersections of equity and energy, or from Dr. José Lopez, my mentor from the Institute in Civic and Community Engagement, who taught me cultural competency and how to be a leader within my own community. And finally, I definitely would not have been able to be here today without the support from the queer and non-binary alumni, my site supervisor, fellows of colors, and allies that have supported me. The emotional labor that you all invested into me does not go unnoticed. The last time I spoke at an audience similar to today was at the California Environmental Assembly. I remember I was a little bit nervous and intimidated, partially because of public speaking, but mostly because the thought of raising environmental issues would not be a message that was welcomed or encouraged. The thought of being the only person of color again raising these issues only increased my anxiety. But at the end of the day, I knew I had to. I owed it to my community members, my gente that are still struggling to keep their basic rights to clean air and water. I was reminded that day that I had special privileges to speak my truth. And I was reminded that I had the power to speak to an audience who have the ability to make effective changes for the communities I come from, queer, Latino, undocumented. I wanted to share that experience for all folks who have ever felt intimidated or felt that spaces are unwelcoming. Sometimes people of color and those who have marginalized identities have to speak up 10 times as loud, knowing our communities had not been reflected historically in government spaces. So I urge you to speak your truth and to speak it louder. Before my time ends, I want to reiterate a few things to keep in mind as we continue our journey in the environmental field. We no longer have time to debate whether or not climate change is real. And just as much, we no longer have time to debate whether or not climate change will impact our historically structurally disempowered communities the strongest. True and just innovative climate change work means that we address systemic racism, xenophobia, homophobia, sexism in our climate change policies. The impact climate change cannot be solved if we leave out our marginalized communities from systemic marginalization and participating from policy solutions. Each and every single one of us has the power to create a sustainable, healthy, and economically just future that benefits all. Us fellows of color have the capability to show our untapped potentials and develop new creative ideas on how to address climate change within our own communities. Non-fellows of color can have the initiative to be conscious of the communities you serve and remind yourself who's at the table and who's not. For those who have more experience, it can help continue to uplift upcoming generations of environmental professionals and help make space for young professionals of color to be their own community leaders. Thank you, and that's all.
Thank you for speaking out loud. Very much appreciate that. Now I'd like to welcome up Kate Meis, our Executive Director and a driving force behind the CivicSpark program since its inception and through the last 5 years. Kate?
First off, congratulations, Edgar. We're so excited for you. Got a new job to get started. And I want to acknowledge Michael McCormick, who's no longer with OPR, who's with Harris and Associates. But Michael was with me in the early days when we were traveling all over the state to figure out what local governments needed to establish what ultimately became this program. So it's always really excited. Graduation has got to be my favorite professional day of the year to see all of you and the amazing work you're doing. So it's a pleasure, as always, to be here, and thanks for all your hard work supporting this program, Michael. So in thinking about what I wanted to talk to all of you about, all of you inspiring leaders, I thought it would be good to think through in a sector in a field that is so challenging, and we're really dealing with these intractable, complex issues like climate change and like social inequities. It's going to be really critical that we have leaders like all of you whose energy and passion and tenacity can really be sustained in the long term. So I want to talk about a few goals I have for all of you that I think can help you sustain your leadership moving into the future and into your next phase and your next careers. So the first thing I want to talk about is the importance of embracing change and the importance of ongoing learning. It used to be that it took 20 years for something to scale to the point of widespread adoption. Now it's closer to 5 to 7 years between the time something is introduced and it's dramatically changing the way we do things. So just an example of that. It took electricity. It was 20 years before we had widespread adoption of electricity and of telephone lines. It took 10 years for cell phones to reach widespread adoption. Smartphones, only 5 years. And we've seen that in a number of sectors. You just think about Uber. 10 years ago, if you were to said Uber, people would have thought about the German word, if anything. They would not have thought about what has become a mobility mode. In only 5 years, Uber hit 1 million rides. Last year, they hit 10 billion rides, and they've dramatically changed transportation as we think about it and as we know it. And we're seeing the same thing, the same rapid innovation, the same fluidity, the same evolution and rapid scale of evolution in the workplace that you guys are entering and that you've been in as well. The medium tenure now for workers aged 25 to 34, probably most of you fit into that, is just 3 years now. Most people will switch careers 5 to 7 times throughout their working life. Not jobs, they'll switch jobs much more often than that. They will fully switch careers 5 to 7 times in their working life. So that means a number of things. It means that we need to respond much more quickly as leaders. It means that we need to be very resilient, and we need to commit to ongoing learning, commit to curiosity, and commit to being able to see past our current way of doing things. The second thing that I would encourage you to do is to establish diverse networks, and that's going to be critical for this fluid workplace. But it's also going to be critical to identifying the type of solutions that we need. We are not going to solve the intractable, complex problems that we're facing with the same level of consciousness that created the problems in the first place. And by having more diverse groups, by bringing in diverse perspectives, we can actually sharpen our thinking and expand stale ways of thinking that we get into by surrounding ourselves with similar people. It's challenging. It's a lot easier to be around people that agree with you, that are like you. It takes time. It takes a willingness to be a lot more vulnerable than most of us are comfortable being, to establish that trust with people that have different experiences, different cultural competencies, different languages, professional experiences. But it's worth it, and the studies bear that out. They show that people that are in diverse groups are actually better problem solvers, that they have more insight, greater insight, more dynamic ideas, and a much stronger willingness to change. So often when we see completely new solutions come up, they are the people that are boundary crossers that are coming up with these solutions. So I encourage you all to do that in your work. And then finally, third, and possibly the hardest in this space, is I encourage you to maintain and to build your optimism. And I know that in a field like climate change, as we tackle issues like social inequality, it's hard not to have some amount of cognitive dissonance. So we can hold on one part of our brain and one part of our life that we believe the climate science is true, that we are very concerned about racial and socioeconomic inequalities, but we also know that we have to get by on the day-to-day basis, and it's hard to feel like our daily actions are ever enough. But as individuals, we can make a difference, and as individuals that are part of larger groups with actions that have ripple effects, we can make a substantial difference, and we have to own that and believe that in the core of our essence. And luckily, I see evidence all around of this potential. At just 15, Greta Thunberg went to the Swedish parliament and demanded that they act urgently on climate change. This 15-year-old started a global movement, the Student Strike Against Climate Change movement. There are now over 1 million students in 112 countries that are protesting and demanding action on climate change because of one 15-year-old's willingness to get up and stand for what she believed in. At 15, would you have thought that you could make a difference globally? Do you think you can now? Do you think you can make a global difference now? At 29, a waitress and bartender decided to run for US Congress. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the youngest woman to serve in US Congress and is making waves and drawing a lot of visibility and attention to the urgency of acting on climate change and the urgency of addressing racial injustice. As individual leaders, we can make a difference, and we have a responsibility to make a difference. And if you were all to truly believe that you can not just make a difference in your communities, but that your actions can have ripple effects that can change our national policies, that can change what happens globally. And you're all already doing that. You have a foundation to build on. Your work over the last 11 months has made a significant difference, not just in your communities, but in the people whose lives you've touched, that will continue to do great and amazing things because of the inspiration and the model that you all provided. And all of your activities have risen up to a statewide impact as well. So collectively, you are making a statewide impact. So thank you all for your service. I am endlessly energized and inspired and impressed by all of you, and I look forward to rooting you on as you all enter your next chapter. So congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'll just say a brief anecdote about impact that I heard on the way in here, and I won't say who it was, but one of our community partners was looking at maybe not getting funding for CivicSpark the next year, and the public actually wrote to elected officials and said, if you don't fund these people who are making a difference, I'm going to personally come out and campaign against you. So you guys are really impacting the communities, you're impacting people, and you're calling people forward for action. So it's very, very exciting. So now I'd like to invite up Annie Carrol, who is Assistant Planner and Resilience Coordinator and our amazing liaison with CivicSpark, to introduce our keynote. Annie?
Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Annie Carrol. Thank you all so much for all the incredible work you've done. I just want to say congratulations, and we are so grateful for all of the incredible work that you've done for all of us. So just wanted to say that. I'm here to introduce Kate Gordon, who's the Director of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, or OPR. She's also the Chair of the Strategic Growth Council, and she is the Senior Advisor to the Governor on Climate. Director Gordon is a nationally recognized expert at the intersection of climate, energy, and economic development, but like all of you, Director Gordon began her career by bringing together different stakeholders with diverse perspectives. She began right out of college as a tenant organizer, but since then she went to Berkeley. She got both her JD and her master's in city and regional planning. Since then, she's worn many hats, many of which I'm sure you are interested in your own careers. She was a lawyer, urban planner, nonprofit advisor, and of course a leader in the green jobs and the climate risk movement. Immediately prior to joining OPR, she has done a million things, and so I'm narrowing it down a little bit just to give you a few examples of all the things that she's done. She was a senior advisor at the Paulson Institute. She provided strategic support on issues related to climate change and sustainable economic growth. And this includes the Institute's US-China CEO Council for Sustainable Urbanization. She was the founding director of the Risky Business Project. If you get a chance to read the Risky Business Report, I would highly encourage you to. It focused on quantifying the economic impacts of climate change to the U.S. economy broadly. She was also Senior Vice President for Climate and Energy at NextGen, which is a nonprofit based in San Francisco, where she provided California policy development solutions, large-scale national communications, and research projects. And she was Vice President of Energy and Environment at the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. She's been everywhere. Director Gordon has dedicated her career to many of the issues that you have worked on in this service year, from climate change to resilience and adaptation, energy, and economic development. And I cannot think of a more inspiring leader to talk to you today at the culmination of your year. So please welcome Director Gordon.
Thanks so much, Annie. It's funny, my job at OPR is like it brings together all these different parts of my career. I never actually thought I would have a through line from the tenant organizing to the DC policy to the green jobs and it all has come together, which is just amazing. It's such an honor to talk to you all today. I also am so impressed and inspired by everything you're doing. I just wanted to do a couple of quick thank yous. Kif, who I've worked with for years in the climate risk space and love the idea of continuing to work with you through this program. You know, Kate is local government commission. You know, the CivicSpark wouldn't exist without you. You are the foundation and the framework and the bedrock. And so thank you for taking that on and being such an important kind of mentor and kind of manager of this program. Michael McCormick, you know, we wish was still at OPR, frankly. The one person who left before I took over, I tried not to take this personally. As soon as he heard I was coming, he took off. But he told me over email the other day that standing up this program was his proudest achievement in his state government career. And I think that's really a testament to both him and his dedication and to all of you. So thank you. Also, just Ciaran and Edgar, like great. I mean, what great words from both of you. And I'm excited for both of you. Ciaran's going on to a graduate program in my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. So I am thrilled. And actually, one of the things I did in that long career where I actually didn't ever switch careers really, but I switched jobs a million times. But one of the things I did was help to found and run the Apollo Alliance, which was the first sort of green jobs organization. And we started it in Madison, and actually Satya Rhodes Conway, who was my first hire for that program, is the mayor today. So you get to go be in Madison under Satya, which will be great. And Eric Sundquist, who was my second hire, now runs the State Transportation Network and advises states all over the country about transportation equity. So you really, the network thing really does matter. And Edgar, the PUC, I mean, you are going into the belly of the beast. I mean, Ciaran's going to do the data and the research and make sure that it's unassailable and we know what we're talking about and we're going in the right direction. You are going to be just at the middle of the storm of how climate risk impacts the economy, impacts our ability to get things done in California. It's such an exciting time to be there. Great, congratulations to you. I think the new president is fantastic, and I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity. So congratulations, and congratulations to all of you. So I recently reread The Power Broker, the Robert Moses biography, and if you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's sort of like the planning, it's like the soap opera of the planning world. I am in no way advocating a return to Robert Moses' style of planning here, but I do think one thing that he said at the time, and it's interesting to look back at his era, he said, planning has eras, right? There are times when planning is what everyone talks about, and there are times where it's what nobody talks about. And when the world is in disarray, when there are wars, when there are mass social movements, when there are, tensions in the economy, is when planners kind of come to the fore. And we are, I think, in an era of planning today, and an era of trying to figure out a long-term response to what feels like a very challenging and disruptive time in our history. And one of the things I love about this program is that you can think of that at that very, very huge scale. And then you can think of it at the very local scale where you've all been working in. Just to counteract my Robert Moses reference, to quote Jane Jacobs, also around at the same time, she said famously, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they're created by everybody. So we have the global scale of climate change and of global disruption and of the affordability crisis and the climate crisis and all the things we're dealing with today, and inequality and social justice, and bringing that to a local level and saying, how do we engage everyone? How do we listen to everyone? How do we make this a project for everyone at the community scale to address those huge challenges? I think this is especially true in California right now for a lot of reasons. Although I would argue that in California, instead of an era of planning, we are entering an era of resilience. So just today, before coming here, I had a number of calls on the train, which I took up from Berkeley, where I live. I had a call with the reinsurance industry to talk about how to manage climate risk in California. I had a call with state leaders across various agencies on managing wood from our forests as we work to mitigate risk from wildfires and think about community scale economic opportunities for forested communities. And I had a conversation with colleagues in the governor's office about how to incorporate climate projections into other infrastructure planning, like around roads and schools and any place where we do infrastructure investment. Each of those conversations, and that was just today, each of those conversations is at heart focused on making California a more sustainable and inclusive and resilient economy. And each of them is technically in a different field, right? I mean, there's a housing conversation, there was a wood conversation, there was a transportation conversation, there was an insurance conversation, but at the bottom, every one of them has to be done resiliently, in a resilient and an inclusive manner. You guys are at the front lines of this. You spent the last year combating the greatest threats to California resiliency. The issues you're working with today are going to be issues your whole career, and the careers of those coming behind you for decades to come. But you also represent, I think, a new and better way of thinking about resiliency. You know, we used to talk in the climate movement only about adaptation, right? There was mitigation over here and adaptation over here. It was like, oh, we're reducing emissions over here, and those adaptation people have just given up. They've just decided it's all over, right? We'll adapt. Like, it was considered a cop-out to focus on adaptation. I think that we are, thank goodness, past that era. Now it's true that resilience is part and parcel of the climate agenda. It's not separated from mitigation. It is central to our goals of reducing emissions, protecting communities, leading the nation and the globe on best-in-class climate strategies. And this is a central theme and way that Governor Newsom, thinks about climate leadership. Not as a separate silo, not as a separate agenda, but as part of a key economic and social issue baked into every other policy area of this administration. And just two quick examples from my last 6 months, our last 6 months. Wildfires, right, have taken over our lives and the state. And wildfires are really important from a climate perspective. You know, they're caused and made more severe and frequent by climate change. They are exacerbated by the fact that we have an affordability crisis that is moving more and more people in California into those areas. And we require utilities to serve all those people, and so there's this inherent risk factor. All of a sudden, it's very clear that there's an economic impact of climate change when the ratings agencies downgrade the ratings of your big utilities because of wildfire risk. When your biggest utility goes bankrupt because of wildfire risk. When people can't afford insurance and can't afford to rebuild. All of a sudden, it's a core economic issue. Housing, direct relationship, huge priority of the governor, direct relationship to fires. Again, people moving into these areas. And the core fact that the more people move away from urban parts of the state, the more people drive. And transportation emissions are the biggest part of California's emission profile and the rising part. So all of these, ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these issues that we're dealing with are climate resilience issues, and they're all local issues. You all have been at the front lines of this approach. As CivicSpark fellows, you have touched almost every aspect of how local and regional government works on resilience, from land use to climate to water to housing to transportation to equity in government. And you've seen that even though climate is a global issue and everyone talks about it as an existential global threat, its solutions and its impacts are local. Profoundly local, and that's where innovation happens, and that's where optimism happens. But local governments don't have the capacity to meet that challenge. It's a huge challenge. The fourth climate assessment made clear that the lack of funding and insufficient staff resources are the greatest threats that local governments perceive. This is what Michael and Kate found out when they did that, what sounds like a really fun road trip around the state. As CivicSpark fellows, you were providing that capacity. You were there providing invaluable support and expertise that they needed to address these challenges. Over 20 of you worked on climate action plans at the local level to help communities understand and prepare for those impacts. You've been working on water management, water supply, water quality, all of which are inherently climate issues. You've been working on resilient, sustainable housing strategies across the state, not just looking at affordability as sort of the cost of housing, but of the cost of housing, of transportation, of the cost of living in an urban heat island and how to mitigate that, of the ability to get to jobs and services, and to have a quality of life that's consistent with the state we want to see. This world that we're in is sort of a scary place right now. I don't think any of us can deny that. And the march of climate change can make it scarier still, but I think we're fortunate, and I'm inspired to live in this era of planning and of long-term thinking and of optimism, and with a governor focused on innovative solutions, big picture ideas for how to make the state stronger, more inclusive, more sustainable, more resilient in the face of these threats, and continue to be a global leader in how other places can do that. This is the time for you all to go from here, take what you've learned, go and serve your communities, as over 70% of CivicSpark alum have done, continued this work. This is, and I'll just make one plea, this is a time for public service. Even if you're out there changing your careers every 5 minutes, like Kate said, this is a moment where working in public service is critically important. This is a moment where coming to your communities, to your state, to your country is more important than ever. We need your ideas, we need your optimism, we need your experiences working in communities, because we need better solutions than those that we've had in the past. So I would encourage you to think about government not as a barrier, not as a bureaucratic nightmare, not as a place that stops things from getting done, but as a tool that we all can use and we can change for the better, and we can make into the frontline response to the issues that we're facing today. So thank you for taking on these incredible challenges, for your energy, for your commitment, for everything you're going on to do. And I look forward to seeing where you all end up in years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was wonderful. And can I have just a round of applause for all the speakers? That was really, really nice. So nothing to add. That was wonderful. Now we get to the fun part in some ways. We're going to bring up Mackenzie, come on up. Chris is going to go over there. We are going to bring every fellow down, all 84 of you, one by one, calling your names out by track, starting with opportunity access, and then water, and then climate. And we have some certificates, both from the Local Government Commission for completing CivicSpark, a certificate from AmeriCorps, a letter from the governor, a letter of commendation, and a number of legislators have also added letters of commendation, depending on their ability and time to get them together for you, depending on where you served. So we got a big fat packet of thank yous coming. So are we all set? No, folks will walk in front. I'm going to stand out here, and Mackenzie's going to hand me packets, and we're going to shake some hands. Kate, do you want to come up too? Yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll start here with opportunity access. Peter Brown. Alexander Burrows. Go ahead, that way. Jarrell Francisco. Rebecca Hirsch. You can all sign that. Micah Houston. Tristan Lanza. Tal Litwin. Naomi Lopez. Gianna Marasovich. Reed Miller. Stacy Morales. Catherine Oren. Kyle Schweizer. And Daryl Ulama. Next up, we have our water fellows, starting with Marjan Chris Abubo. Crystal Alas. Melissa Claire Howard. Matthew Jackson. Morgan Kaplan. Brian Keener. Amber Leavitt. Frank Lyles. Priya McWan. And Oswaldo Martinez. Haley Patton. Marisa Perez Reyes. Ernesto Rubalcaba. Alexandra Sharp. Cameron Townsend. Ayelet Samek. Yay. Thank you. Myrani Anaya. Oh, sorry. This is Climate Fellows now. Starting with Myrani. Meredith Anderson. Edgar Barraza. Jessica Barrett. Elisa Barrios. Jesus Benavides. Jack Boyce. Sean Burns. Tanuviel Carlson. Abigail Carlstad. Elizabeth Carrad. Jessica Cervantes. Courtney Charter. Simone Cordery Cotter. Jessica Cornejo. April Crane. Sarah Emerson. Anna Fessler Hoffman. Susan Fu. Angeline Fauché. I'm sorry. Guadalupe Franco. Suzanne Hartman. Andrew Hett. Sierra Huffman. Brian Iwamoto. Michael Jimenez. I'm gonna shake your hand. Daniel Kosiba. Matthew Kubasak. Christy Liang. Connor McEgan. Jessica McHale. Adam Murphy. Maggie Murray. Lina Ohanian. Francisco Perez. Yuval Pearl. Zachary Rita. Oceane Ringet. Sarah Risher. Samuel Ruderman. Yeshi Sals. Joseph Santiago II. Claudia Scott. Alan Seiber. Sieber. Sorry. Paris Smith. Lynn Socha. Isabella Spiez. Erica Trinidad. Andrew Wakely. And Carolyn Ives. Congratulations, you all made it.
Okay, I got it. I'm not kidding. It took us 5 years to get that down that smooth. It's never worked that well. It was like 1 year was behind here. We were like juggling them. That was awesome. You guys win that for what that's worth. So in closing, I want to say a few thank yous of my own to some people and groups who made this year possible. Of course, our partners in OPR, both past and present. You guys are amazing. the partnership we have with you and with California volunteers to make communities more resilient in the face of the changes and threats we face is really what makes this happen, and we are so grateful. I lost my place here. Our project partners, for those of you who are in the room, please raise your hand if you're a host. Thank you guys so much. You know, your commitment to a thriving California and your willingness to see CivicSpark as a vehicle for change is what lets this program work, and we are so grateful for that and for giving the opportunity and opening your doors to our fellows. Our team, I can't say enough, okay, I'm gonna get all teary here. Mackenzie, Criselda, Ariadna, you guys, our management team, are amazing. Ashoka, Kaylee, Tim, Sarah, Savannah, Amber, Katie, Lexi, Atlee, Danielle, and Ken, amazing. We have such an incredible team. Every day they work hard and they always put our fellows and our partners first. And give them a round of applause. Everybody knows I'm a little bit of a crier, so this is nothing new. And of course, you guys. Everybody said it already, so I just have to say it one more time. This is really amazing. We're proud of what you do. We are excited for what you're going to do, and that's really the most important part of this here. As everybody said here, we need your passion, your creativity, your commitment, and your leadership. And you have shown over and over again this year, you have that and more. And so we're humbled by what you do, we're honored by what you do, and we are excited by what you will do. So thank you, and congratulations to the class of 2018-19. So, yeah, no hats. Throw those letters in the air. So now please join us downstairs for a reception, and thank you again for coming. In the lobby, not downstairs. Thank you.